Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Strange Stories. I'm John Brown. Our lead story for today. DA pulls out as Ramaphosa fires their minister and cancels Spain trip over GNU threats. The year is 2025 and the political landscape of South Africa is anything but stable. The Government of National Unity, or GNU, a coalition formed to steer the nation through a period of immense challenges, is facing a significant test. At the heart of the turmoil is a series of events that began with the dismissal of a deputy minister and quickly escalated into a crisis threatening the very foundation of the coalition. To understand the gravity of the situation, it's important to rewind to earlier in June 2025. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the formation of a national dialogue, an initiative intended to address some of South Africa's most pressing issues: unemployment, poor governance, and societal issues. The dialogue, set to commence on August 15, 2025, was to be led by 31 prominent South Africans.
My fellow South Africans, today I wish to address you about the National Dialogue, an initiative that has been in discussion by a number of leaders in our country and many other people for some time. In my capacity as the head of state, I will be calling a national convention on Friday, the 15th of August 2025. This national convention will represent the diversity of the South African nation. The first national convention will set the agenda for the national dialogue.
However, the initiative was immediately met with skepticism, primarily due to its staggering cost of 740 million rand. Critics questioned whether this was a genuine attempt to solve the nation's problems or simply a costly exercise in political maneuvering. Then, on June 25, 2025, President Ramaphosa made a decision that would send ripples through the political establishment. Andrew Whitfield, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, a member of the Democratic Alliance, DA, was removed from his position. The reason given for his dismissal was an unauthorized trip to the United States in February 2025. This explanation, however, did little to quell the growing unease within the DA and raised questions about the president's motives. John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, responded swiftly and forcefully. He accused President Ramaphosa of a flagrant double standard, pointing out that several ministers and deputy ministers within the African National Congress, ANC, were facing serious allegations of corruption, yet remained in their positions.
I'm here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre where I've just delivered a speech on the floor of the parliamentary sitting in the budget vote debate around the firing yesterday of the DA Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield by the President. And I think if we start to dig a little bit deeper into why Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield was really fired, one will see it was because he was doing his job. He was asking uncomfortable questions about the lottery tender award by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. He had asked some very uncomfortable questions about the transformation fund that is busy being set up by that department, and he had raised serious concerns about some of the persons being nominated for the board of the IDC. I believe that these are the real reasons why Minister Whitfield has had to be moved from that position. Now, it is very clear that this cannot stand. So, we have given the President 48 hours to act similarly against the other members of his party who are guilty or facing serious charges or who are mentioned in the Zondo Commission report, to ensure that they are held accountable. If the President is wanting to clean up his cabinet, then we would like to suggest that he starts by sweeping outside his own front door before sweeping outside the DA's front door. When compared with the acts of omission and commission of so many other ministers and deputy ministers that are sitting around the cabinet table, these are people who've been implicated in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. These are people who stand accused of very serious fraud and benefiting from the looting at the VBS Bank. These are people who stand accused of misleading Parliament and manufacturing committees that ostensibly selected politically compromised candidates for the CETA boards. How is it that all of these people retain their jobs, but Andrew Whitfield loses his? Now, we're giving the President 48 hours to show us clearly that he is a man of his word.
Steenhuisen issued an ultimatum. President Ramaphosa had 48 hours to remove these individuals from their posts or face grave consequences. The ministers specifically named were Human Settlements Minister Dismissal, Higher Education Minister Withdrawn, and Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation David Mahlobo. As the deadline approached, the political tension reached fever pitch. President Ramaphosa, scheduled to attend a conference on financing for development in Seville, Spain, on June 30, 2025, made a last-minute decision to cancel his trip. Instead, he delegated International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola to represent South Africa. The official reason given was that recent political developments required his close monitoring and management within the country. However, it was widely understood that the president was staying put to deal with the escalating crisis within the GNU. On the 28th of June 2025, Steenhuisen held a press conference in Cape Town, where he announced the DA's response. While the DA would not be leaving the GNU entirely, they would be withdrawing from the national dialogue.
The Democratic Alliance's federal executive has resolved to withdraw from the national dialogue with immediate effect. We will also actively mobilize against it in order to stop the obscene waste of 740 million rand of public money, starting with a call on all civil society bodies in South Africa to join us in demanding that the dialogue not proceed until President Ramaphosa fires ANC corrupt individuals in the national executive. Because the reality is, no matter what the dialogue resolves, no matter how many noble resolutions it may take, and no matter how many feel-good moments it has, nothing will change in South Africa for the better if we keep the same people around the cabinet table who have involved themselves in corruption, maladministration, and misleading of Parliament. The dialogue also has no constitutional standing whatsoever to take or impose decisions. Plus, I make the point that we have already had a national dialogue last year. It's called an election. And the people said very clearly in that election that they do not want to have anything to do with ANC one-party arrogance or domination. A second and critically important step that the DA is taking is to vote against upcoming departmental budget votes for the departments headed by Similani Nkabane and other corruption-accused ANC ministers. A further step that was considered by the federal executive was the tabling of a motion of no confidence in the president. We understand the concerns that many South Africans have about what would follow or could follow if Ramaphosa was removed from office. Now, while the FedEx decided not to table a motion of no confidence at this stage, it is clear that the DA is in the process of losing confidence in the president's ability to act as a leader not only of the ANC, but of the GNU, of which we are the second largest component. And if the ANC fails to course correct, the federal executive will seriously considering exercising our constitutional prerogative by tabling a motion of no confidence in the president.
Steenhuisen stated that the DA did not believe it was in the interest of South Africa for the current GNU to collapse, as such a collapse would cause significant economic damage to the country. He argued that the DA's presence in the GNU was beneficial to the nation, preventing what he termed a coalition of chaos and destruction. Steenhuisen didn't hold back in his criticism of President Ramaphosa and the ANC. He accused them of repeatedly violating the GNU Statement of Intent, a document outlining the principles and agreements upon which the coalition was formed. He highlighted the lack of progress in establishing a conflict resolution mechanism and clear terms of reference for the clearinghouse within the GNU. The DA leader also revealed that President Ramaphosa had not consulted him before dismissing Andrew Whitfield, a move Steenhuisen described as disrespectful and a violation of the Statement of Intent. He argued that the clauses relating to consultation and consensus were being ignored by the president and the ANC. Despite the DA's decision to remain in the GNU, Steenhuisen made it clear that their support was not unconditional. He announced that the DA would be voting against the individual budget votes for the departments headed by Human Settlements Minister Dismissal and Higher Education Minister Nkabane, both of whom were facing serious allegations. This meant that the ministers would have to find other ways to get their budgets passed in Parliament. Steenhuisen emphasized that the DA would not be voting against the overall budget, as they wanted to ensure stability and continued service delivery for the people of South Africa. However, they would use their votes to hold specific ministers accountable for their alleged wrongdoing. The DA's federal executive had also considered tabling a motion of no confidence in President Ramaphosa. However, they ultimately decided against it, recognizing the potential instability such a move could create. Nevertheless, Steenhuisen warned that the DA was losing confidence in President Ramaphosa's ability to lead the GNU in a fair and impartial manner. He stated that if the ANC failed to course correct, the DA would seriously consider tabling a motion of no confidence in the future. The political turmoil surrounding the GNU has raised several critical questions about the future of South Africa. Can this fragile coalition survive the current crisis? Can President Ramaphosa restore trust and confidence among his coalition partners? And what are the potential consequences if the GNU were to collapse? The DA's decision to withdraw from the national dialogue and vote against specific budget votes is a clear signal of their dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. It is a calculated move designed to put pressure on President Ramaphosa and the ANC to address the issues of corruption and lack of consultation. The DA's dilemma is evident. They face criticism from their supporters for not taking a stronger stance against the ANC, yet they also recognize the potential risks of collapsing the GNU. A collapse could lead to a new coalition between the ANC and more radical parties, such as the Economic Freedom Fighters (EFF) or the MK Party (MKP), which could have disastrous consequences for the economy and political stability. Steenhuisen has essentially dared President Ramaphosa to fire the DA from the GNU, a move that would expose the president's hypocrisy and force him to defend ministers facing serious allegations. The ball is now in President Ramaphosa's court, and his next move will determine the fate of the GNU. Adrian Basson, editor-in-chief of News 24, has argued that Steenhuisen has exposed President Ramaphosa's hypocrisy. How can the president justify firing a deputy minister for a relatively minor infraction while ignoring much more serious accusations against ANC ministers? This is the question that the DA has now forced the president to answer. The situation is further complicated by the fact that at least 4 ANC cabinet ministers are under criminal investigation. Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane also faces scrutiny for allegedly lying about a panel advising her to appoint ANC loyalists to the boards of Sector Education and Training Authorities, SETAs. The events of the past few days have highlighted the deep divisions and tensions within the GNU. The coalition, formed with the promise of stability and progress, is now facing its most serious challenge to date. The future of South Africa hangs in the balance as political leaders grapple with difficult decisions and competing interests. The DA has confirmed they will replace Andrew Whitfield with another DA nominee as Deputy Trade Minister, signaling their intent to remain a player within the GNU, albeit a discontented one. However, President Ramaphosa can no longer ignore the accusations against key figures within his own party. He must address the concerns raised by the DA and take decisive action to restore trust and confidence in the government. The cancellation of President Ramaphosa's trip to Spain underscores the seriousness of the situation. He has chosen to remain in South Africa to manage the crisis and prevent the DA from taking any drastic action that could destabilize the country. Thank you for watching this news video. We'd love to hear what you think about this story, so please leave your comments below. We read them all and appreciate your insights. Join us again in our next strange story. Until then, goodbye.